right, ladies and gentlemen and other creatures of the night, we're going to go ahead and take a real quick selfie because that's what I do. Give me a smile. Love it. Thanks, everyone. So what I'm going to be doing today is talking about building automation engineers from scratch. You are going to hear a lot about me because this is really just a story about me that I'm trying to apply to a whole bunch of other people. That's y'all. So my name's Jenny. My pronouns are she and her, and human interfacing is my absolute favorite thing. From my very first job as a waitress to my very second job as a waitress, my third job as a waitress. Anyway, I did a lot of waiting tables. I love humans. I love interacting with them and talking to them and seeing how I can make their lives better. Spoiler alert for the rest of the talk, I didn't like automation because there's no humans involved. Spoiler alert for the third part of the talk, there is humans involved. These are my two cats. This is my darling Dante and Dax Dumpling Private Eye. You're going to be seeing a lot more about them because I love cats. If you don't love cats, you should probably leave now. I've got stickers. If you want stickers later, we can hand them out. All right, here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some assumptions that I'm going to make that are going to form the basis of this talk. After that, you're going to get the abridged history of Jenny. We're going to talk about setting expectations and look at a framework for success and the challenges that you're going to face. And after that, hopefully we've got a plan that'll help you win in moving manual testers to automation engineers. All right, I know I titled this talk, Building Automation Engineers from Scratch, but even when you're making biscuits from scratch, you start with something. And this talk is going to start with a few assumptions. First off, we're going to assume that you've got a group of manual testers who are looking at moving towards automation, or you are a manual tester looking at moving towards automation. We're going to assume you've got time and resources to apply to this adventure. There's tons of talks out there that are about finding time for automation. This is not one of them. We're also going to assume that you've got some kind of support system or mentoring system, or that you've got the resources to potentially get that in play. And lastly, for this slide, we're going to assume that you've got the willingness to make a plan and execute on that plan. If you're missing any of these things, we can talk later. We're also going to make some assumptions about the humans that are involved in this adventure. The first assumption is every tester is an SME or a subject matter expert in their field. And that doesn't mean mobile, it doesn't mean backend, it doesn't mean API, it means testing. Every tester is a subject matter expert in the matter of testing. We're going to also assume that manual testing is still hella important. This is an incredible skill that we're building on, not replacing. We're also going to assume not everyone wants to be an automation engineer. Not everyone wants this as a primary job function. That being said, and spoilers for the rest of the talk, it should be a tool in your toolbox that you can pull out and apply when necessary. Finally, and my favorite one, we're going to assume change is scary. All right, so who am I? My name is Jenny, as I said before, and I have been a manual tester for my entire life. Whenever I joined one of my previous companies, my boss was like, hey, you should learn to automate. And I'm like, no, that's cool. I'm cool. I don't need to automate stuff. And he's like, you probably should. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. See, I was a computer science student when I was much younger. And I loved it. And then learning about computer science, learning about all these things, going through a very regimented process, absolutely destroyed my love of programming. Just, poof, it's gone. And I thought to myself, oh, geez, I don't want to do that again. That was awful. I lost one of my passions. So I told him no. I said, no, I'm not ever going to be a button presser. I'm a manual tester. And he's like, okay, that's cool. He definitely made that face at me. The big thing, though, is that I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't understand that automation wasn't something that I was going to replace my manual skills with. It was going to be an addition to it. And so I rejected it outright. And my boss let me reject it. My next boss did not. So I ended up moving from that job. And I say moving, what I meant is laid off. I ended up leaving that job on decent terms, getting into a new position, and they said, hey, we want you to automate. And I'm like, that's cool. You can want that. But I started to rediscover this love of making computers do things. It turns out that I really enjoy testing, and automation is a way to make that happen faster. Automation is a way to make that happen differently. And as I was learning with my team members at this new job, I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. Then everybody got laid off there. And I was like, wow, maybe I should learn automation because I need a new job. I got my current job and was like, okay, I want to learn some automation. And they're like, that's awesome, let's do this. And then I got on a team that was 90% manual testing, and I'm like, wow, is this going to be my life forever? So part of this story is about how I took this team that was 90% manual testing that had no time for automation and moved us into a place where we had time for automation. And that's amazingly fun and amazingly cool. Let's back up for a second. Let's talk about expectations. Everyone has expectations. We all have something we expect whenever we're moving into something, whenever something new is happening. And this is no different. Starting out, you want to get out in front of these expectations. You want to recognize that they're there, and you want to say, okay, yes, these are expectations we have. Are they right? Are they wrong? Let's get out in front of them. Let's have this conversation now, and not in a couple of months when we realize we've been working off faulty expectations. My favorite one is perception of ability. I told you I'm an expert, right? I'm an expert in manual testing. Do you want to know what I'm not an expert in? Kotlin, Espresso, XCUI tests, Swift, Java. I don't know what I'm doing. I sit down and I'm like, I should Google that. And it's very difficult for me because I have this idea that I'm an expert, that testing is a realm that I'm very good at. It's something that makes me happy. And now I'm being faced with a form of testing I don't know. So a lot of times I will find myself rebelling against it. I'll say, well, I don't want to do this because I don't want to be bad at it. And that's hard. These are important feelings that I have and important feelings that my team has. So how do we start meeting them? Well, first we realize we're not supposed to know everything by our second rodeo. This is why Google exists. This is probably one of my favorite internet quotes ever. Second to the dog one. So what we need to do is we need to say, yes, manual testers have very important, very valuable skills. We need to not disparage these skills. We are not replacing manual testing with automation. We are augmenting it. We are creating a better ecosystem in which quality and testing and high morale can thrive. So we start by saying, yeah, your manual testers are important. How do we do this? Pair them with a developer. If you can take a manual tester who's been doing her job for a long time and set her down with a developer who's been doing their job for a long time, you can start making tests together, and you can make each one of those people better by pairing. And this is something that my team did a lot of. We actually set aside about 2 hours every other day, at least twice a week. You know how projects are. At least twice a week to sit down and have what we call dedicated automation time. This would be a time for us to do PRs. It's a time for us to do pair programming, mob programming, and I would invite in as many senior developers as I had favors to call in and have them sit down with us and start working through Swift, working through Kotlin, and finding out what can we do to be better testers and better coders. It was amazing. I didn't realize that there are so many opinions still about tabs and spaces. Why haven't we resolved this, y'all? And the other thing is to reset your mindset. So we need to be careful not to expect a level of expertise from people that they are not able to give us. And for me, I'm considered a very high-level tester at my job because I've done testing for a long time. I'm very good at it. I speak at conferences. I have these skills. But when you start talking to me about automation, I'm not as sure what's going on. I learned about dependency injections the other day, and I think I started crying blood. Um, this is not a skill I have. But you want to talk about exploratory testing, ad hoc testing, you want to talk about some boundaries? I gotcha. So I want to reset my mindset and say, okay, I don't have an expert level knowledge in this coding language, but I have an expert level in testing. How can I apply this to the automation? It's not just about writing code. It's about deciding what code to write, where to write it, how to write it, and who should write it. And anyone that talks to me for more than about 10 minutes know that Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory are personal heroes of mine. This is something that they say a lot, and it's so, so, so valuable. You need to lose your fear of not being technical enough. There is a pervasive mindset in the manual testing world that they're not technical. That having this ability to code, this ability to script, this ability to make weird symbols do things means you're technical. So we need to lose our fear of not being technical enough. We need to embrace the idea that all forms of testing are technical. Emotional, but also technical. The next one is perception of velocity. Everyone loves velocity, right? It's the best metric. It is not the best metric. Officer Howard. Velocity is not objective. It's not something where I can say person A and person B have the same velocity. I can't compare their velocity because they're different people. They're at different places in their lives. And when we start applying this to brand new automation engineers, if we start saying, oh yeah, they can absolutely churn out X number of tests in X number of days, that may not be accurate because Joshua can go and just bang them out because he knows what he's looking for. And I'm sitting here being like, so how do I make it click a button? And my velocity is naturally going to be slower, and that's okay. We need to remember this is okay. The velocity is not just code produced. It's knowledge gained. It's confidence gained. It's all of these things that build you up in an emotional way and make you a better person at your job. It's very important. The next one, we have an expectation of our perception of success. Success is a funny thing. Success is not usually a lightning bolt. It's not usually just something, okay, we have automation tests. They must have written them. They must be successful. So what we need to do is define our success metrics. When we're taking a group of manual testers or a manual tester from manual and adding automation on top of it, what does success look like for that person or that team? Success should be team-based and it should be individual-based. My success metric for the past couple of months when I was first joining my new team, learning a new language, was 1 PR a week. That could be a PR that I put in, one I pair programmed on, one that I reviewed myself, but I needed to interact with 1 PR a week. There's another team at my company that's like 5, 6, 7, 8 PRs per tester per week. I don't know what they're doing. But they have a different success metric. Here are some that I've seen used before that may or may not work for different people. So everyone on the team put in a PR. We used this on my team where I was moving a bunch of people from manual to automated. I wanted every person to interact with a pull request. I wanted them in a meeting where they reviewed it. I wanted them writing the darn thing. Or I wanted them pair programming on it, that they needed to interact with a PR in some way. The golden path or happy path is automated. We can do a certain number of things, and maybe that's a test. Maybe that's, hey, everybody knows how to tap a button now. That's kind of exciting, right? There's a certain number of tests. Tests are running in a certain place. My personal favorite that I've been using this week has been, no one cried. So as we're thinking about this, don't just assume everybody knows what success looks like. Make it concrete. Put it on the wall. Write it down. Tell everybody this is what we're going for. And if we don't hit it, that's okay. We're agile. We can retro it. We'll figure out a better one next week. Make progress towards these goals. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about expectations. We've talked about the kind of pre-work that goes into it. Let's talk about the actual work. It'll be super fun, I promise. The first thing to start with is, what do you know? And it may feel silly, but, oh wow, that's way tinier than I expected. Apologies, slides will be posted later. This is a skill set built on top of your existing skills. You are not starting from zero. You're not actually starting from scratch. This is something important to remember. And you don't just drop your manual skill set wholesale to pick up automation. It's not like a grocery cart. You don't have to take the milk out so you can put the cheese in. You want to remember that your manual skills are so valuable, and they're always going to be necessary because there's some stuff that computers are just really bad at, and we need humans to do those things. Everything you have done in your past is a stepping stone to making your today better. That's all of your manual testing. It's your waitressing. It's the times you've interacted with people. It's the times things have gone bad. All of these things are a base that you are building the rest of your career on. And you are building a freaking skyscraper, y'all. Everything changes how you approach automation. It changes how you do automation. And it can change how you feel about it. So remember that your past informs your present and can help craft your future. You also know how to use tools and language. I know how to use a chainsaw. I can figure out how to use pretty much anything else. Those are all tools. Languages are tools. Frameworks are tools. You can figure out a tool. And you can speak. Some of us speak, not me, some of y'all speak more than one language. You can pick language up. You can pick code up. You can pick these things up. You have the skills to learn. You know logic. If you've done any testing at all, you know logic and you know how users like to violate our beautiful, beautiful logic. You know that, you've got that, and it is so valuable when you're moving into an automation career. And most importantly, this is another favorite quote of mine from Jasmine Smith. Testers hold the mental model of the system in their minds. More than a developer, more than a product owner, more than anyone, you hold that mental model in your mind. You see the system. You interact with the system. You don't interact with just one piece. You interact with your whole framework. That is incredibly valuable when you start talking about automation, because we're not doing unit testing here, y'all. We're talking about UI automation. We're talking about user flows. We're talking about interactions with the system. Okay, so you know what you know. What do you need to know? Spoiler alert, it's not code. Spoiler alert, it is code. So one thing that I found extremely important is you don't want to learn to automate. You want to learn to write code. Because there's a lot of shortcuts you can take to just make a thing work. But if you learn to code and you learn how to make clean, beautiful things, then you are going to make clean, beautiful, beautiful automation. Learn the software development lifecycle. A lot of times the testers are at one little segment of the software development lifecycle, and you want to know what it looks like for the whole thing to happen. Learn Git. Learn whatever versioning tool your company uses. Try not to cry when you have your first merge conflict. Spoiler alert, I cried a little. It was like 12 pages. This is really, really important. And if you can't learn your versioning system and everything else, find those 3 or 4 people that know it super well and bake them cookies, brownies, whatever you have to do to be their friend. And learn your IDE. I keep finding out new and interesting things about the IDEs that I use, and the developers are like, oh yeah, you can just do brrr, just click this button and it refactors everything. Command-Option-L, and suddenly all of your lines are beautiful. These are incredibly valuable things that are going to save you so much time and makes you look cool to your friends. And remember, automation code is production code. If you are using something to test production, it's a production thing, and you should treat it as such. Don't accept bad code from yourself, from your coworkers, from other people, because this is a framework on which your testing is built. Learn to code beautifully, learn to code well, and do it as well as possible. It will also save your developers a lot of heartache reviewing your PRs, and it will make you look cool to your friends. And clearly that's what I'm all about, is looking cool. Next, we're going to talk about learning. Find a mentor. This has been the biggest thing for me personally, is finding someone I can talk to. Someone I can say, wow, do you want to know what I did today? It was awful, I cried. I've been having a super emotional couple of months, clearly. Someone that I can talk to and say, hey, I'm having some real feelings about this. Or someone was kind of mean to me, and they'll look at it and they'll be like, they weren't actually mean, you did this wrong. And I'm like, no, you're being mean. Pair with developers and testers. I am going to say straight off the bat, find a developer and be their buddy. You're going to make them a better developer, and you're going to be a better tester. Developers, their entire life is code. That's not true. Their jobs are mostly code. If you want to go to the source, the expert on writing code, you want to go to a developer. They're going to sharpen you like no one else. And if you find a really good one, you can just form an incredible partnership with them that'll make you better, them better, and your team better. Dedicated time for PRs, help, and other tasks. This is that automation time that I mentioned earlier. Physically set it aside. Book a conference room. Put it on your calendar. Make this time yours and yours alone. Even if you don't have someone that's going to sit down with you, make sure that you've got this dedicated flow time for automation. This is the biggest thing that changed our team's perspective on automation and everyone else's perspective on our team. Because I really didn't have resources granted to me by the company to do this automation push. I kind of wrestled them out of my project manager's hand and said, we need these 6 hours, these 4 hours, we need them. And I made sure that we had them. And when our developers started seeing us actually sitting down doing this in a conference room, they said, hey, can we help? By the end of the 6 weeks, every single developer on the team had committed something to our automation repository. Every single one. And that was a really, really incredible boost for the test team. Example automation projects, if your company has any, are pretty good. Coursework, if y'all haven't been using the Test Automation University, where have you been? It's so good. It's also Angie's baby. This is an incredible resource that is out there for you. There are other incredible resources if this is how you learn. There's also games. When I was learning Ruby, there was a Ruby Warrior game where you like type it in, you make little dude do things. And that was really fun. That appealed to my gamification love. So these are all different ways. Find the way you learn and learn that way. I don't do amazing with coursework, but I do incredible when I pair with somebody. So that's what I do. One of my coworkers doesn't pair well, does amazing with coursework and games. So that's what she does. You are not required to learn like I learn. You should learn like you learn. And if you don't know your learning style, mess around until you find it. It could be examples. It could be just bulling right into it and seeing what happens. Find your learning style and cater to it. That will be so valuable to you. And remember, practice makes permanent. Practice does not make perfect. Whatever you do, you will keep doing. This is important when you're reviewing PRs, when you're writing code, when you're writing tests, when you're naming tests. We have a particular style on my current team that we name tests with, and I've never used it, so I don't name my tests like that. And every single PR, they're like, Jenny, we had this conversation. For me, I have practiced a different style, so that's what I'm naturally drawn to. If you practice clean code, if you practice good code, if you practice setting aside time for yourself, that's what you're going to do in the future. Oh, we've got challenges next. That's Dax Dumpling when he was like 6 weeks old, and every time I see this, I'm like, wow, I need a kitten. Automation is the first to go. For most teams, automation is not a priority. It is a nice to have. It is those little rosettes on top of your birthday cake. So what we want to try and do is make automation valuable. How does it become valuable? There's a lot of different ways, and it really depends on your team. For my team right now, we've sold it to the client. So the client's on board, that makes automation valuable. For my other team, we had a smoke test that took us, I don't know, probably 8 hours or something if we ran it end to end. It was terrible, and it was boring. No human wants to do the same thing over and over and over. We are not good at that. You know who is? Computers. So we said, what if we took 2 weeks and we put this really gross thing into automation? What if we got part of this in there? What could we free up? And talking about it like that made us think, oh, wow. It made the people around us say, oh, wow, yeah, that works. That's what we need. That's valuable. And valuable is going to be different for different teams. Find your valuable, expound upon it. The other thing to remember is automation is just another tool. It is a tool in your toolbox. The more tools you have in your toolbox, the better equipped you are to face the future. I just moved into a new apartment. I have a screwdriver. That is literally all I have as far as tools in my apartment is a screwdriver. I have a lot of pictures that are sitting on the floor because I can't hang them up because I don't have a hammer. I could use my screwdriver, but that would be terrible. Automation is a tool. Exploratory testing is a tool. All of these things are tools. The more you've got in your toolbox, the better you are going to be at your job. Maybe you don't apply it to everything, but the places you do apply it, it's going to make a world of difference. My favorite challenge is, but I don't wanna. And if you heard that in tiny baby Jenny voice, yeah, that's pretty accurate. This was me. I don't want to do this. I have been a manual tester my entire life. I'm good at it. I've built my career on this. Look at where I am as a manual tester. My second manager, my second favorite manager ever, Steve Gibson, said tough luck. He said, it doesn't matter if you don't want to. Software development is about change. It's about things happening, things changing around us. And if we don't rise to meet that, we get left behind. The biggest thing here is look for a whole team approach. It's not about me. It is. But it's not exclusively about me. It's about my Android devs, my Apple devs, my random back-end people. It's about my technical requirements manager. It's about my product manager. It is about everyone on the team being better, being happier, making a quality product that we can actually put out there and feel good about. And someone on this team has the skills you need to supplement what you're doing. I told one of my good friends who is not on my team, I said, I'm learning Kotlin. I don't know this language. It's kind of weird. I don't know where my semicolons are. I grew up with C++. And he goes, I love Kotlin. I'm like, you do now. So now I've got this resource that I can pull in whenever I get stuck. I can say, Ethan, please, can you help me? The resources are out there. And again, Lisa Crispin, automation is scary. Work to get your whole team engaged rather than to specifically become a test automation engineer. When you get the whole team engaged in quality, when you get the whole team on board with this idea that automation is a tool, automation is something that's going to make everyone better, the change is dramatic. It's beautiful. And again, professional development means change. The world is changing around us. Software development, software testing, software everything is wildly different than it was even 5 years ago. If we don't take these opportunities to make ourselves better, to bring something new into our toolbox, to find places where we can be better at software testing, at making things, then we're going to grow stagnant. We're going to be in a place where we can't grow, where we can't learn, where we can't successfully help our end users. And that's terrifying. It's terrifying to think that if we refuse to change, if we refuse to do these things that make us better, that we could literally hurt people. That's scary. Professional development means change. This is where we're heading, y'all. Humans that are better prepared for these challenges are going to be the ones that succeed. They're going to be the projects that succeed, the products that succeed. And by learning automation, by adding this into our toolbox, we are better prepared for whatever the future looks like. We can rise to meet it. We can change. We can adapt. We can find new methods of making software better, testing better, everyone's lives a little bit better. And I think that's really beautiful. This is a recap slide. It's very long, and I don't want to read it. Thank you, everyone. This is Building Automation Engineers from Scratch. Jenny, Bramble, Dante, Dax, et cetera, et cetera. I would love to take some questions. That's a lie. I hate question and answer time.
Please hold up your green cards now. I can't see that far.
Just throw the mic at him. It'll be great. Don't do that.
Are there any else? All right, well.
And if your question is what's going on here, Dax had to have a little bit of surgery, and he got food stuck in his cone and was trying to eat it.
Hi, you hear me?
Yep.
My question is, how do you balance the transition from going from manual testing to automation? Do you put a stop on doing manual testing and start doing automation, or 90-10?
So the question is, how do we balance going from manual to automation? Is there like a ratio that we're looking for? Do we just drop manual completely? And the answer is, oh Lord, no, please. It depends on your team. And that's kind of a annoying answer, but it kind of depends on the needs of your team. Automation is a tool. It should be a supplement at first. If you have the ability to completely drop your manual testing and do automation straightforward, that is an interesting position to be in. And it's not one that I've actually seen. What I would say is evaluate your project. Evaluate what needs to be tested. Look at the risk of what you're doing and see where automation fits. Talk to your project people, talk to your developers and say, hey, can I take X period of time a week to do automation, to learn these things? And sometimes they'll say yes, sometimes they'll say no. So I hate to say it depends, but it depends.
Thank you.
We have a follow-up?
I'm sorry, I just thought of it afterwards. So I just, as a follow-up, I guess he questioned like maybe the balance. I've been in a similar situation to yours several times as well, and usually people pick regression to start with, like to kind of get going with the momentum of their creation of automated tests. Is that similar to where you guys went with it, or like what did you start with when you were looking to automate?
So the question is, a lot of people start with regression testing. Where did we start? And one of the reasons people start with regression testing is because we know it super well, and it's very annoying. It's also something humans are not good at. Again, I'll say it a million times, repetitive tasks are something people are not good at doing. So by starting with regression, we are alleviating the mental burden of this, and we are making something that we do all the time an obvious time gain. So yeah, we started with regression. We actually had a list of steps that our client took on every build. It was, I don't know, 20 steps or so. And we looked at it and we said, okay, what of this can we automate? Oh, we can automate like 80% of this. How long does that take us to do? Oh, wow, that takes us like 4 hours? Yeah, I would love to get 4 hours back every build day for some exploratory testing.
New question?
So
what have you learned about recognizing people who are struggling going through this process and what to do to help them?
So the question is, what have I learned about recognizing people that are struggling, and what can I do to help them? Or what did I do to help them? The interesting thing about moving from manual to automated and struggling with that is that it's almost identical to burnout. It looks so similar. You need to know what burnout looks like for your team and what stress looks like. For one of my humans, it was migraines. If there was more than a couple of migraine days a month, something was wrong and that needed to be addressed. Someone else makes jokes. There's a certain type of joke that they make, and if they're making that joke, that's burnout. That's a concern for me. Someone else folds paper cranes. The smaller the cranes are, the more concerned I should be about them personally. So whenever I'm helping someone move and make this transition, I say, okay, what does burnout look like for this person? And sometimes I'll ask them, I'll say, hey, what does it feel like? What does it look like when you start to get overwhelmed or burned out? And sometimes they'll tell you. They'll generally lie. And they don't mean to lie, they just don't know. But you can take it as a starting place. And by having that conversation, starting that conversation, what you're saying is, I understand this is hard. I understand this is overwhelming. I understand you may and probably will get burned out at some point. I'm a safe person to discuss this with, as long as you're not a jerk about it. Does that answer your question?
Hi, Jenny. Good talk. Tangential question. If you could go back in time and change some things, like any thoughts on that? Like anything that you'd like to add?
Oh, dude, if I could go back in time, I would go back to 2009, grab myself by the shoulders, shake myself, and say, Jenny, Andre is amazing. You should learn everything you can from this man before everybody gets laid off. I would start coding earlier. I would get back into it, and I would say, this is where software is going. Back then, I assumed that I would always have, a two-income household. I would always be extremely in demand as a manual tester. I made these assumptions that 3 years, 10 years, 5 years later are completely incorrect. And I'm like, wow, I was wrong. So if I could go back, I would have gotten my feet into automation sooner. I would have listened to Steve. I would have done that more. On my current team, if I could have gone back like just a couple of months and talked about the start of our automation time, what I would have done there is gotten myself a little bit more involved. What I ended up doing for a large portion of it was protecting the team. So I'd be like, okay, the team has to have their 2 hours, so I'm going to, stand at the door and be like, no one can come in. I'm going to do the manual testing. I'll go to all the meetings. I will kind of take the brunt of this so that the team can have this automation space so we can create something. And that wasn't healthy for me, and it wasn't actually very healthy for the team. It's hard to lead a group of people when you're not doing the thing they're doing and you've never done it. So if I had let myself be in the meetings more, do a little bit more, get a little bit more ramped up with them, I think I would have had a lot more success personally.
You were talking about automation. Automation means you have to learn to code. Which language or languages did you pick and why?
Well, I picked Kotlin because that's what my team is doing. So I work in client services right now. We have, a bazillion projects in a bazillion different languages, and our test team needs to be able to move quickly between them. So I landed on a team doing primarily Android mobile testing, and we're writing all of our automation in Kotlin. Before that, I was on an Apple team, and we were doing primarily Swift. The one thing I will say is write in the language your developers write in. Native automation should be king because you know what I've got now? I've got me writing automation Kotlin, Joshua, Ian, Nick, James, Eric, Jesse, that's the other person. I have 7 people that can help me write code because 5 of these people are developers. This is their thing. This is what they are hired at my company to do. And I have them as a resource because we're writing in the same language. And that's really cool.
Thank you, because I have the same experience. I also look at my environment and recognize, hey, these persons can learn me the code. So I also learned Swift. I also learned Java, not Kotlin, unfortunately. And on my next job, hey, it's a different environment. They are